All right. Wow. I better seize the moment while it's quiet. I know the teachers in the room can speak loudly, but I'm not necessarily being given that gift. So I'm Amelia Bond, President and CEO of St. Louis Community Foundation, and we thank you all so much for coming today. For those of you who were here for the first Transformation in Action effort, welcome back. Those who did not, you're in for a real treat today to learn more about the project and the initiative and our status. Couple things. One, the house does have a slope, and you are on wheels. So it will be interesting to see what this room looks like by the end of the conversation. But so just so you all know, you might move a little. And I am just going to. Do want to say that this is a donor initiative, a donor of the Community Foundation. You're going to learn a lot more about it, and I'm going to turn this over in a minute to Daniel Yawitz. But the initiatives in St. Louis are very, very important. And so often we support programs as a community, but we don't think about that 30,000-foot level of initiatives that can really make transformation and change and coming together in a collaborative effort. And that's really what this is all about. And so we're at the Community Foundation, the staff has been just so honored to work with the donor and all of the participants and in this leadership project. So with that, I'm going to just turn it over to Daniel, and you're going to give a little overview and pass it along.
Sounds great.
Thanks.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Thanks for coming. I'm Daniel Yawitz, as you heard, and I am just going to be very brief here. I would like to offer a little perspective as one of the donors to this work, and then I'll hand it over to kind of get to the meat of the event. And I'll give an overview of what's coming here at the end here. But I think what I'd like to do is try to just answer a relatively simple question, which is, what is this work all about? Some of you have probably read the materials. Some of you, I know, were here last year, and I would understand if even after all that, you still weren't entirely clear on exactly what this work was, kind of what the core is. Particularly as someone like myself, I'm not an education professional, I'm not an education reform professional. It can be a little hard to kind of follow the plot. So I think what I'd like to do is just share with you how I've come to understand that over the last year, and maybe that helps. I think the biggest thing to say about what this is to start with what it's not, okay? So this is cheating a little bit, but this is not a product, okay? This is not an education reform product that has been designed from outside and imposed from above. So this is not a kind of technocratic solution to better public education. This is not someone coming in and saying school should be smaller, or the class days should be longer, or you should be using this type of curriculum or another type of curriculum. It is not a product also critically in the sense that this is not something that's imposed from outside. What this is a process more than a product. So in being a process, this is teachers, principals, and school leaders at the central office, district level, superintendent and other staff there, really coming together to go through a process of defining what the vision is for what a great school should look like in a great classroom. It is the process for them identifying the obstacles to reaching that vision. And it's the process for bringing in some outside expertise and support and giving them the flexibility and the freedom to solve those problems on their own. So this, I think, probably rings true for a lot of people. It taps into, I think, what are some important characteristics just of human behavior, which is, we really do our best work when we're given the freedom and the autonomy and the accountability, really, to try things and fail and learn from them. And we do our best work, well, I should say there's nothing more demotivating really than having someone tell you what to do, tell you how to do it, and then kind of look over your shoulder with a clipboard and make sure that you're doing it right. So this process that they're going through really is about the journey as much as it is the destination. And it can be, when you'll hear about design team meetings, you'll hear about coaching, you'll hear about retreats and collective vision and all these things. As you're hearing about all that, I would like you to sort of put it in the framework of this is part of a process of really ceding some control to principals of their schools and to teachers of their classrooms and to students in a lot of sense of their own work, really to tap into that human behavioral insight that we do our best work when we've got some freedom to try and to fail and to learn. So that's a lot of what this project is. It is a process, and at its core, I think I mentioned the word human. I made a note because you will hear it. The human part is very intentional. It's not kind of a throwaway word. When Linda says that word, it's there for a reason, which is really to acknowledge that schools are human systems. And I think anyone that has played on a sports team or worked at a company where you've seen the power of culture. Culture can be a negative, but it can be a tremendous positive. When you look around and you see your colleagues or your teammates working hard towards a shared goal that you've all identified together, it makes you want to work harder. And you really can't underestimate the tailwind that can provide to an institution as it's trying to get something done. The culture part underlays all of this work, and the tough part about culture is it doesn't come in a can, right? You can't buy it. You have to brew your own, and that's what this process is institutions building a solid cultural foundation of excellence on which all the other stuff gets laid. So I hope that helps. That's how I've come to understand this project, and it's taken me 2 years, but I'm kind of slow.
He's our best translator.
So I'm going to turn it over now to the more interesting part, which is the people that have actually been immersed in this work for a year or two. Linda Hinkey, former superintendent of Maplewood Richmond Heights, led an impressive turnaround of that district, which some of you may know the story there. Then went on to retire, in her words, but start a consulting company that does educational consulting around the nation and around the world. Really bringing her experience from MRH to other school districts that want to adopt this mindset. Vicki May of WashU's Institute for School Partnerships, that is their primary effort, the university's primary effort to work with K through 12 institutions around St. Louis. The two of them have done a lot of great work over the last 2 years and have really put their heart and soul into this work. And I just want to say thank you both for that. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for your perseverance and your hard work. So they're going to moderate a panel of some of the folks at the schools that have been doing this work. Then we have a couple comments from one or both of you about kind of the future of the work, and then a Q&A.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything?
I think it sounds great.
And then we will have time, we're trying to leave time at the end so that individually you can talk to any of the panelists also.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel is like a dream. You have all these ideas swirling in your head, and you start talking with him and with Rue about the work, because initially they were just committed to making a difference in schools, but weren't sure how to do it. And so working with him has been, and Rue, have been a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for both Vicki and me. They pushed us hard when we were not as clear as we should be, and when we weren't as planful as we should be, and I think they have made a real difference in the work in substantive ways, and it's real treat to have such great partners. So I also want to thank you for taking the time to come here. My job is in 3 minutes to make sure you understand this. We've been working on it for 2 years. Yeah, okay. So schoolwork is really hard, you know. And one of my favorite descriptions of it was by a guy who said, teaching is a lot like driving a truck of live chickens backwards down a rocky road in the Andes with no brakes, offering colorful commentary and information as you go. I thought, wow, that sounds like the work of a superintendent too. It is the work of education today. You feel as though there's so much going on all the time that it's hard to be reflective and plan ahead to what you really want to create. Sometimes your job feels as though it's a lot of reacting. But reacting isn't what creates transformation in schools. It's also not what creates joy in teachers and joy in children. So we're trying to do something a bit different. When people ask me, what exactly are you transforming with this work? My answer is the way we do school. It means the way we lead, and the way we teach, and the way children learn. I think years of failed reform have made it very clear that doing bits and pieces of change in a school does not yield the deep kind of transformational work that really needs to happen if our schools are going to look and sound different. We know that children need to be actively engaged in interesting work and rigorous work. We know that because many of us are parents and because many of us are in schools and too often see the opposite with kids sitting in rows filling out worksheets. We know that teachers need to have the space to create themselves. We know they have to feel less alone in their work, less guilty of allowing children to be engaged because there's that test score looming as the major focus of their work. We know that teachers need to have coaches standing beside them, helping to try new ideas and new things. Not just once a month, but every week, week after week, saying, so how did that go? What would you like to try? Let's give this a go. Relentlessly supporting the work. We know that building leaders need to have the room to lead and need to be freed up from all of the compliance-focused work that has become a part of a school anymore. And we know that professional development needs to change from those old-time sit-and-gets for a day to long-term study with a coach beside you in the classroom, helping you apply and learn from that. Transformation, we believe, occurs in the relationship. And we think we need to move from, this is probably one of the more radical things, from a single heroic principal trying to help all the teachers in a building grow, to a principal and a team of teachers, of lead teachers, who can really help transform the school. Each of those people are given a group, each of those people is given a group of teachers, and they spend the entire year working that with that group of 7 or 8 or 9 teachers. So this is really about making deep changes in the way teachers teach, the way principals lead, and the way systems support the work. That's why working with a single school is a good way perhaps to start, but you really need to have your central office, your superintendent sitting at the table saying, I'm going to do this. And a week ago in University City, I heard the superintendent get up and say to the leadership teams, this is the way we're going to work in University City. We're going to work as teams. And if that's not comfortable for you, maybe we need to talk. Because that's the way the work is going to be done. We're going to collaborate ourselves to a new place for University City. You need a superintendent who's just that clear. And that requires you to be pretty darn brave. So I just brought, everyone said, why did you bring these? I brought these because I want you to see, peacocks are so cool. So I want you to see why it is that focusing on teaching, learning and teaching and leading and supervision, all of that together has to be part of a program if you're going to make it work. So, Amelia, would you come up here for a minute? And will you, I just want you to hold this. And Tamiko, would you come? And Pam, would you come on up?
I'm holding the plate.
Oh, yes, here we go. Karen, that's a good, okay. So here's the deal. I want you each to try balancing this peacock feather by looking only at where the tip hits your hand, like this. Only look there. Now we're going to put it up like this.
Balance it.
And you have to balance it, but you only have to look at the tip. You're not looking at the tip, Amelia?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So it's very hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know why it's hard? It's hard for the same reason that reform is hard, because you're only looking at one little part of the work. Transformation says we go all the way to the top and we look at the whole system at work. Now, look at the top and try to balance it.
It's totally different.
Isn't it different? Ah.
That's amazing.
Thank you. Let's give our wonderful. So that's what we're about. We're about not just looking at one little place in the district and trying to, quote, fix it. We're trying to engage the entire district in a conversation about what would you like to create and be involved in those conversations all the way through the district. That's what makes the difference. So what's in it for you? Well, frankly, I think democracy is in it for you right now. I think this country needs to start living up again to the ideals of its founders. We desperately need graduating from our schools leaders and scholars and stewards and citizens who are ready to tackle the big messes we've given to them. And I don't think we're going to get there with traditional schooling. Transformation allows us to create something that is powerful for the children, the teachers, and the leader in the district, and most importantly, for the community that wraps around it. So thank you.
I don't know, but it was good, so it doesn't matter. I've never seen that trick. So today, I think one of the challenges is we want to be respectful of your time. So we really wanted to invite all of our participants. We currently this year have worked with Ferguson Florissant, as we did last year. We've worked with University City Elementary Schools, and we've worked with St. Louis College Prep. And we wanted each of them represented on the panel. In addition, as Linda said, we're really thinking about this distributed leadership. So on the panel today, we have a superintendent from University City, we have teachers and teacher leaders, and we have central office staff that really has been our major liaison, and also the math coordinator, and we have a principal from University City. So what I hope today is to ask an open-ended question that just allowed them to tell a tiny bit of a story. And so I'm going to start us off and ask you to kind of spend about 2 to 3 minutes on this prompt. The human-centered transformational model is about disruption of business as usual. As you think about the model this year and how you've worked with it, what have been some major shifts in your thinking or some major shifts in your work? I'll just let one of you jump in.
Can you tell everybody tell their name and
Yes,
what school they are?
when you first start to answer the question, thank you. I was going to say that, Karen. It was in my notes. Thanks. So if you'll introduce yourself before you speak each.
We'll do that. I'll start. I'm Sharonica Harden-Bartley. I have the pleasure of serving as the superintendent of the School District of University City. And thank you so much for being here today. I wear a couple of hats in U City. I'm also a parent. I have a kindergartner at Jackson Park. This is my principal. And I'm also a resident of University City. The human-centered work, the transformational work, is really about disrupting the status quo. It's really about taking everything that we have thought we knew about public education and turning it on its ugly head. Because a lot of the things that we know about public education have miserably failed children, particularly children of color and children in poverty. University City currently services 87% of African American students. Our poverty rate is hovering around 67%. Our students come to us with a tremendous amount of needs, but a tremendous amount of human potential. And what this model has enabled us to do in U-City is to really rethink leadership. The principal as the king or queen in his or her kingdom and queendom with the S on their chest and the cape is no more. We're really understanding the relationship piece. I firmly believe that no learning happens absent a relationship. And I think that's with children, but I also think that's with adults. When I think about the people that I'm closest to, I have an authentic, genuine, meaningful relationship with them. So at the heart of this model is really thinking about leadership in a very different way, empowering principals to not have to answer to the bureaucracy of a central office, to allowing central office staff to sometimes get out of the way and let great principals do what great principals do, developing those teacher leaders so that they are empowered to use their strengths and talents for a couple of reasons. I have a human strategy background. I used to be an HR professional, but also helping them understand that they can be leaders in the context of a classroom, that we don't always have to move them to a building principal position, which typically happens with our best and brightest teachers. So this is a very different paradigm shift for me. It's caused me to be more vulnerable in how I show up. It's caused me to challenge my assumptions that I brought in my 22 years of education, and it is allowing us to create this amazing ecosystem of learning organization that is flexible, that is agile, and has students at the heart of everything that we do. So I am very appreciative of the learning. It is not a program. Thank you for that. It is not this fad that is going to go away. It is a way of being. And my aim and my hope is that the transformational work will become a part of the DNA of the School District of University City and just how we exist in the work for children.
Thank you, Sharonica. We could go now.
So one thing we always look for in the project is passion and strong leadership. So thank you, Sharonica. It's my pleasure.
Can I piggyback a little bit?
Absolutely, Sarah.
My name is Sarah Tehan. I'm a fourth grade teacher in the Ferguson Florissant School District, and kind of piggyback off what Sharonica said. I think that whole process of the disruption makes you more reflective, and that's the biggest piece in my 14 years of teaching is that I have to spend a lot of time reflecting versus reacting. And I think a lot of times we spend that time reacting as teachers versus spending that time thinking about that relationship piece, whether it is with a student, a parent, or a staff member, or your leadership that you're working with. So that piece has really been really huge for me as a teacher every day when I go in. And it makes you more vulnerable because you're taking that time to really focus in on that relationship and being reflective in that piece. So that is one thing that I've really taken away from this experience this year.
I think I want to piggyback on that as well. My name is Kevin Vogel, Ferguson Florissant School District, and I'm the math coordinator for the district. I was also in charge of PD last year when we were going through this process.
And he's our liaison to FERFLO.
So what I wanted to add was the thing that I see that's transformational change that is different is that it's not coming from the central office down. It's actually coming from the building level. So the schools that took part in this process this year, I really saw that the teacher, the ISL, the principal, all these people were involved in working together on the same level. It wasn't like the principal saying, this is what we're going to do, you know. It was like everybody there as a team decided. And then taking what they've learned and then bringing it back to their buildings and putting their plan into place within their buildings. And it, like I said, it wasn't district level down, it was building level up.
I'm Rebecca O'Connell. I serve as the principal of Jackson Park Elementary School in University City. And something that I think is really important to share about our work and our learning is that it isn't linear. So it's not like, oh, what we learn on Wednesday, it has to go in order of A, B, C, D in order to create transformation. For us at Jackson Park, we take the new learning and then we're constantly making connections from our work. So from our new learning, making connections, and then honestly at times circling back and connecting our ideas. And so just to give you an example, I feel like we've been creating a positive culture at Jackson Park. So that's something that we've been focused on from a human standpoint, building quality relationships. But since entering the work and having Vicki as my transformational coach and really trying to cultivate my teachers in a way that is human-centered and having them at the heart of the work and at the heart of the idea making and the decision making, I've gone from the feeling, I remember having this aha moment when we were in one of our learning sessions. I was like, oh, I know my teachers, I know them really well. I know I can tell you something about every single one of them. I can engage in a quality conversation with all of them. I can tell you about their families. I felt like I was in there with my teachers, but I couldn't, I had that moment of, I don't know what drives them to come to work at Jackson Park every day. I don't know why they get up every morning and decide, I'm going to give my best today at Jackson Park and be a quality teacher and do what's best for kids. And so that was a growing point for me of how do I unearth that in them in a way that benefits students after we unearth it. And so for me, some of the most important work for me at Jackson Park has been creating a compelling purpose with the staff, and what is our shared vision of success for our students look like, and what does it look like when we are at our best and when we are making that come true for our students, when we say we want for them, what do our actions look like to make that happen, and then how do we know that it's really coming to fruition. And so it is Lakeisha works with me, and it is a lot of reflecting and maybe slowing down and going backwards a little bit, and then gearing back up with some new learning. So it isn't like you just start and read the book from cover to cover. We're sort of flip to this chapter, go back, and come back and forth. And so that's where that to me has been very meaningful in our process.
My name is Lakeisha Franks, and I am a teacher instructional leader. Something that was most important to me was basically just building relationships, because this is my first year out of the classroom. So I wanted to make sure that I got to know all of the teachers that I was going to be working with. So that was really important, like asking background questions of all the teachers, like why did you get into this field? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And in turn, that was going to help me when I came in to observe the teachers in the classroom. Also being aware of their core values. What do the teachers believe? And I also believe that also drives them in the classroom each and every day. So having the core values, I asked each teacher to give me the top 3. And I just believe that helped me show up in every single classroom. What do they value? How should I approach them when I have difficult conversations? And I found that to be very meaningful. I will also say the transformational work every single Monday, every single month, really pushed my thinking, because as a teacher, I'm used to just telling and offering suggestions, and I want to do a lot of guiding of the work. But in this role, it's important to ask questions. It's important to allow the teachers to own some of the work, so I can't do all of the thinking for them. So that was something that I really had a few challenges with at the beginning. Like, I wanted to tell everything because I had 10 years of classroom experience, so I know this, try this worked. But that really wasn't beneficial. So again, when I am mindful of the way that I craft my questions, and some of that learning took place in transformation as well with Santa Fe. Learning how to ask the right questions and really pushing their thinking really allowed them to have a collective approach to the work. And I think that was just really valuable with me transitioning out of the classroom and into the role.
That's great. Scott, did you?
Yeah, I'm prepared to answer the second question.
Okay. Can I add one more thing? So we said we probably won't have everybody have time to do both of them. You guys have stuck with your time. I'm really impressed.
Can I add one more thing? I think that oftentimes in the K-12 space, particularly the public school K-12 space, we don't value the development of leaders. We think that a principal is a principal, they arrive. A teacher leader is a teacher leader, they arrive. And leaders need development consistently. And in most companies and most industries where you have effective CEOs, executives, they have that coach. And we just don't have the infrastructure from a financial perspective to support the level of high quality coaching for our leaders. So I think that piece is invaluable. Yes, I am the superintendent, but again, I don't have an S and I don't have a cape on my chest. So we have to spread that support and provide the expertise of other individuals that can assist them with navigating problems that happen in their building. And it's not taking anything away from the leadership, it's adding value to it. So I think that is a critical point of this work. That coaching piece, that executive coaching piece, the transformational coach has been invaluable, I think, to our leaders here in University City.
Yes, each school in the project is assigned a transformational coach who works with them each day in the full day training session, but then meets with them 2 days a week, 2 days each month to really help them push that agenda and help them problem solve. So that transformational coach is a huge part, I think, of the work. Thank you for pointing that out, Sharonica.
And I think as we hear, one of the things I wanted to be clear about is that our instructional leaders that's a new position for each of the schools that we're working with. And in University City, they call them TILs. So that's Transformational
Teacher Instructional
Leader. And for Flora, you call them
ISLs.
ISLs.
Instructional support leaders.
Instructional support leaders. So when you hear these initials,
That's what they are.
they're that. And really, we're interested in thinking about how do we build these teams where the teacher voice is heard. So the instructional leader, the principal, and central office all planning together.
It really flattens the organization so that you don't have a hierarchy in the way that the superintendent isn't sitting on top and giving her wisdom, although she has a lot, to the principals and the principals to the teachers. It's much more collaborative. And these teacher leaders, there's 2 in each building. Each of the schools committed to restructuring to get 2 teacher leaders in each building. Right now, those teacher leaders are coaching, but next year they're going to begin to build supervisory capabilities. And we are hoping by the 3rd year, that's in our plan, that these teachers will also be evaluating the teachers they're working with. So they will be taking charge of end-to-end development for the 7 to 10 teachers they're working with. That is a huge difference in the way traditional schooling is done.
And I think, again, that distributed leadership model, I don't know how many of you have tried to supervise 25 people or 45 people. It's like, really, how do we really have quality feedback?
And relationships.
With the relationship piece, which is what
Exactly.
we know that's where it happens. Yeah.
So the second prompt is to tell a story about designing and implementing something from the training into your school setting. So we're asking to, what's some of the impact that has been from this work? So we're going to start with you, Scott.
Yeah, I can answer. My name is Scott Cluthero. At St. Louis College Prep, I'm called just a coach, no acronym. I'm going to tell you about something that I think exemplifies the work that we've done. At a lot of these monthly meetings, me and my team of 4 will look at each other at this aha moment that frequently happens, just kind of without saying anything. We're like, yeah, this is something that we need in our school. One of those things for us was an article on deeper learning, which just it was an introductory article on deeper learning, which is just this idea of collaborating and communicating and developing an academic mindset in the classroom versus a traditional approach of these are some facts, learn them, and then show them to me on the test. We wanted to go and to our teachers and say, let's do this, and let's do this, and let's do this. But of course, that's not the model. So we kind of struggled with, well, how are we going to get our teachers to really take the lead on this? So we did an article brunch. We sent people out to different fun locations around the city, and they would discuss the article. And then when we got back to school, we put them in their department teams, math, science, English, and so forth. And we were prepared to kind of push them if they needed to be, but everyone really enjoyed the article so much that the conversations just kind of started naturally. And so the math department wanted to focus on this element of it, and the English people wanted to do a different part. But the outcome was each department kind of came to a consensus on things that they wanted to try over the next couple of weeks, and they held each other accountable to it. They met a couple weeks later, reflected on it, refined their goals. In some cases, they scratched some things, and other times they added a couple of things. And then now we're going on to the second kind of shift of that, and so we'll check in a couple of weeks. It hasn't changed our lives yet, but it has given us kind of a way to go about change.
Yeah, one piece of work that we've done at Bermuda Elementary was, I think it was probably 2 sessions ago on our February meeting, I think it may have been, we had a conversation about appreciative inquiry, and that's just another way of looking at how we can facilitate staff meetings for more of a positive outlook and getting teachers to really think deeply about conversations that they have with each other, but also reflecting on their past experiences as students before they even became teachers. So one thing that we did in our like a meeting a couple months ago was we developed a whole entire staff meeting on how we were going to have this appreciative inquiry conversation, and it was really cool because we developed like maybe 4 or 5 questions about a time where you had an interaction with a student that was focused more on the relationship versus the behavior, because we were finding out us teachers at Bermuda were getting so caught up on the behaviors of the students, we weren't focusing on those relationships that we were building with our students. So it was really interesting because when we had the staff meeting, the entire room was just laughing and positive and just really telling stories. And I mean, it went way longer than the principal had originally planned because we were getting so deep into these conversations that it was nice to finally see our staff just really reflecting on those times where we were building relationships versus just focusing on these little things and behaviors that students do every day. So then it turned into our principal and the team. We decided that we're going to move this forward and have something called a hallway huddle. So every day between like 8:20, 8:25 before our bell rings, we were going to gather the entire staff together in the hallway, make a huge circle, and we were going to celebrate times where we saw, I think they call it track and fan, these times where we saw a teacher in the hallway having a positive interaction with the student, problem solving with the student, trying to get them, to really kind of share out those moments that they were focusing on the actual relationship versus the behavior. So at first, we all gathered around day one. We just brought everybody together that we were going to have these shout out opportunities. Here's teacher. Why are we doing this? I'm like, you're ruining the moment. Stop. So then we said, well, remember on Friday when we had these conversations about relationships versus behavior, we're going to shout out times where we've seen this in the last couple of days. So the team, we had a strategically planned where we had seen some of these interactions going on. So we started the trend, and then it just all kind of started spilling out of all these different experiences and moments where other teachers had seen that happen with other teachers. So we do it Tuesday through Friday, because Monday we feel everybody's kind of getting themselves together, and we do it right before we go pick up our students, and it just creates such more of a positive energy. Just we're talking about doing those little things consistently over time. We're hoping that definitely we're going to see a change, and we want to add to it now. How have we seen deeper learning in the classroom? So sharing out those examples and shouting out those teachers that are doing that work in their classrooms.
Great, sir. Thank you. It's a great example. Anybody else about designing and implementing something?
I can share. Oh,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Just to kind of go back to what I was sharing a little bit earlier about bringing all of the concepts and the ideas together. So we started at the beginning of the year. Part of our work was to work with staff and hear from them about what do they envision for our students. What do they hope and dream for our kids? What do we want them to be? What would that look like? What would that look like in all of our content areas? What would those visions look like? What type of student work would they produce? What type of scholars would they be? So we did that through some work in a community circle. So sharing out, listening, hearing from one another, throwing things into the middle of the circle on cards so that we had some visuals about our beliefs, like that we're bringing them all together in this like community pile. So then with the help of Vicki, she helped me organize all of those after the fact, and then later on bringing them forward. So as parts of our new learning, learning about quality student work and what does student work communicate about what we value in our students, and trying to align it for the teachers of what kind of student work are we producing, and how does that connect to what we hope for them to be, and what type of work we dream for them to be able to produce. So we were noticing a disconnect. And so there was this great idea that came out of, I think, maybe from Maplewood Richmond Heights, about this enormous, like, I don't know what you called it. It was like a wall of fame of student work or something like that. And I was like, oh, we can do that at Jackson Park. We have this great spot in the main hallway. We can show it all there. So our operations department was gracious. They came over. I told them what I wanted. They thought it was a little crazy. They did it anyway. We put it up. They made my board dream come true, and now it just needed the student work. And so I shared with the teachers at the end of second quarter. It didn't give them much direction, just please submit. We're coming to a close. Report cards are coming. An exemplar from your classroom, just one, any content area you want, submitted. We're going to hang it. I'm going to take the kid's picture. We're going to put a little bio about the kid, what classroom they're from, what the focus of the work is, and we're going to put it on the board. And it was so sad. I had brought some pictures actually, but it was so sad. I was embarrassed. I was like, I had it on my office floor for the longest time, and I was like, I don't want to hang it up. I don't want to put the kids' pictures next to the work, because it wasn't what we were saying we valued, and it wasn't the level of work that we should be sharing. They were things from, oh, here's the Unit 2 test. You did great. And I had multiples of those. I had multiple tests. I had, something that was like a worksheet that was printed out, not high-level work, not authentic work. And Lakeisha teases me about my controlling aspects of my personality, and I was like, okay, I'm going to let it go a little bit. I'm going to try this. And so I hung the student work up anyway. And our first meeting back together, we did a reflection circle, and I had asked them ahead of time. I gave like 6 leading questions of them to go with their teams and review the work that was out there, and kind of go through a process of, what authentic work do you have? I have a list of questions. I brought them with me to share, but just some questions that I asked them to provoke their thinking with their teams about the work that was up there, and what do you see, and what does it communicate about what we value, and all those kinds of things. And I also gave them actually an article that Linda had written when she was at Maplewood Richmond Heights about student work. And we had a community circle again. We talked about that was when we came together and said, what do we see up there? What does it look like? This is what we said our shared visions of success are for our students. What will we do differently for third quarter? What will we do? And so I waited till third quarter. That sad work hung up there all quarter. Third quarter rolled around, and they submitted their exemplars. And so some of the commitments we made during that circle, and from our new learning, was that it should be authentic and student-created work. It should involve a process, and the process should be shown through the work. So it's not just a final product that appears with it, but where was my learning progression, and what was my thinking that went along with it. And all of those things should be communicated. And then I started to panic, because I'm like, I need a bigger board. So those things are communicated on the board this time. So I put them all up there, and then I asked this time for the team to actually write their reflections as a team, and to look at the board. And the things that they said about the student work and the team aligns to what we are wanting from our students and what we believe they're capable of. So we haven't arrived, but we're moving in the right direction. So I did bring just some examples of the teachers' reflections, and one thing I was joking about at the onset is when we do the circles, I don't have anything. The teachers haven't scribed anything, so I don't have anything tangible to hold on to after we talk about it. But the second time they completed them as a team. And again, this is another time in which I need to give them opportunities in the distributed leadership model of discussing among themselves instead of me always facilitating. And that's something that I'm very familiar with, is, taking them through every step and kind of navigating for them. And I'm starting to try to let go and let them navigate a bit and let them uncover and discuss and come up with the true meaning of things. So I can share these with you if you're curious of it afterwards, if you want to see them. But I kind of brought it before and after.
Can we
Oh,
pass
sure.
it around?
Sure. So the before is the shoddy one on the top, and then
I bet they can figure that out. Thank you, Rebecca. What a good example of continuing to grow and honoring the process and the voices. That's so cool. Kevin, who are you?
Sure. So to pick one, it's kind of difficult because we've had so many wonderful opportunities over the past 2 years, whether it be ethics of excellence, shared images of success, appreciative inquiry, which was mentioned before, transformational coaching. If I were to pick one, though, probably just to kind of talk about, which I was involved a little bit more with, was the deeper learning. So we actually had the opportunity to go to the Deeper Learning Conference. And we got to actually take part in seeing a school there that was taking problem-based learning into the classroom. But one of the things that we did while I was there that I took part of was a deeper learning slice. And during that deeper learning slice, and I'll kind of tell you how we brought it back to our district, we have our summer institute that we've been doing with you guys as well over the last 2 summers. And it's a 5 days of the Summer Leadership Institute of about 120 administrators and instructional support leaders throughout the district. And one of those days was what we learned at the Deeper Learning Conference. We brought back that problem-based learning slice. So the administrators were divided into areas across the district. Berkeley, Ferguson, Florissant, based on their school feeder patterns. And we actually had the PD in community locations within each of those areas, whether it be a
so much fun.
fire department or local library, different locations throughout. And during this problem-based learning slice, there was a driving question. And then from that driving questions, people in those areas would break up into teams, whether it be a team focusing in on the government aspect of that, or whether it be the educational aspect of the environment, the arts, the businesses. So all these people went out into the communities and did research across all those areas. Then they would come back as a team and then put together a presentation and then present all that to people in that particular area.
It was so cool.
It was
The teachers
transforming.
loved
I
it.
would
It
say
was
that
transforming. People learned about deeper learning because they were doing it, you know?
That's right.
Yeah.
So if I were to pick one thing, that's probably the one thing I would key in
highlight.
on. But just wanted to thank Linda and Vicki and the funders for all the opportunities that we've had over the past 2 years. I mean, we've done action research projects, courses. I mean, there's just so much that opportunities that we've had as a district from the learning. I want to thank you.
Thank you. Are we out of time?
No. Well, I'm 45 seconds.
We have 45
Does anybody want to share one last?
45 second story.
30. No, you can tell one more story
29.
because we cut our time. Anybody else want to? No? We're good? Okay. So really what we want to do is just give just really a round of applause for these educators who have taken the risk, been vulnerable, and really helped us tell our story. So thank you. Very, very busy time of the year. So right now, those of you in education know you're trying to finish out this semester while planning for the summer, and then make sure that everything is set up for next fall also. So it's a tough time, so I appreciate that. And so we'd also like to, before the Q&A, just talk to you a little bit about next steps. And I've asked Linda to talk to you a little bit about sort of the more national perspective of the project and where we're going with that.
So there aren't very many school change efforts out there that are tackling school change in the way that we are. One of the places is in Ontario with Michael Fullen. And Michael Fullen is a well-known educational researcher, and he has started an international effort to do the kind of work that mirrors very nicely with our work. So one of the things we plan on doing is combining forces with Michael so that we are part of an international consortium that really looks at this work, and we would be at the cutting edge all the time of other schools and other organizations who are trying to do transformational work at all of these levels. The second thing we're trying to do is begin to establish hubs that allow us to personalize for the region and also go much deeper into the work. So we were very blessed to have our first hub here in St. Louis under the Institute for School Partnership. That was a lot of hard work to get there, and I can't tell you how much Vicki May's work in getting that accomplished matters. We now have a new director of that program, and she's right back there. Audrey Jackson will be directing the program next year, which is so exciting to me. And we will begin with our second cohort next year. So we will have this cohort. This is considered to be a 3-year process to get through this work. So this group has been through year 1. We'll begin with them on year 2. And then we'll start with a new group of schools in year 1 again. So we already have those skills pretty much identified. We have more that want to get in. We're going to try to keep it at a cohort level that we can handle, because each of those schools needs a transformational coach that knows how to do this kind of high-level work. We are beginning to start a hub in Santa Fe. We will be working with the Los Alamos National Lab there to do a similar kind of project that Vicki's institution is doing. We also have someone interested in beginning the work in Seattle, and just a possibility right now in San Jose, California. We also have begun to do some international thinking about this. We have a school in Brasilia that is very interested in becoming the hub for Brasilia. So it's growing a little faster than we had anticipated, but we are beginning to develop the materials and the tools that will allow us to do this with some fidelity and sustainability. For example, we are in the process of writing 26 monographs that really help teams get into the work. They tell school stories. They also give specific tools and strategies. Rebecca's work with Ethic of Excellence, she used a lot of the material out of developing an ethic of excellence in schools. I think you all are given copies of, this is the Human-Centered School Transformation and Introduction to it, and you can read about how miserable I was in MRH for the first 2 or 3 years and how that changed. So we're on a roll, I think, and we're on a roll primarily because we had a couple of guys who were willing to take a bet on kind of a long shot, actually, and then a wonderful team of school people who said, we want to be part of something where we really can create it ourselves. We don't want to adopt somebody else's model. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Thanks. You do have, as we break and get ready to just have an informal time, there is one of the monographs and a copy of all the she said we were going to do 26. We have 5. Well, we have 5, almost 6. So there's Vanna in the back. So we have
There's the materials in those great bags.
There's a Q&A of a 2-pager about the project and then one monograph.
And the Q&A is really sort of, if somebody asked you, what is the project, what schools did you work with, how many teachers, how many schools? So we tried to be concrete about sort of our work this year. So as Linda said, we have continued to try to keep convincing her to come from Santa Fe. It's not always easy with St. Louis weather, and especially whenever we're working with a large number of schools. So we're really excited to think about really establishing the capacity here in St. Louis. Linda's going to continue to co-lead the work with us for the next few years. And again, as we said, We have Audrey Jackson Audrey, stand up. Audrey is fabulous, and she has been working as a principal first at Parkway and then with St. Louis Public, and has been working with Wallace Foundation to really do professional development for principals throughout St. Louis Public and throughout the region. So we're happy to have you on board. We also have a couple of our other coaches with us that have been transformational coaches this year. Leanne Lyons, so Leanne and Barbara Combs. So they both have had extensive experience in as being principals and are some of the most reflective people I know. So I appreciate, and we're really continuing to build our capacity of the coaches. So as we look forward to the next few years, we really want to, first of all, just honor the Yowerts family. They have made, like I think Linda said, they made a leap of faith and really put together a funding strategy that allowed us to build out the model and really start building the capacity here. As you've heard, we've gone to conferences, we've learned from some of the national experts. To bring some of that to St. Louis is really what we want. So I'd like to publicly thank the Yowerts family and for their extensive support. And as you've heard, they've not only been, really providing the funding support for the project, but really be thought leaders and be thoughtful about the project with us. So in addition to the funding that has happened from the family, we also want to just recognize that the districts have made really significant contributions to this work. They have realigned their resources, their staffing dollars to have the 2 instructional specialists at each of the buildings. They provided funding for the Summer Institute, and they put money toward the deeper learning curriculum and professional development. So that's a significant reallocation of their current funding and sometimes additional funding to really support the project. So tonight we are kicking off our public fundraising campaign. Our goal is to raise $1.5 million for our next 3 years of work. And thanks to 2 generous donors, as of today, we have $300,000 toward that goal. And so we really are interested. I know many of you who attended last year, we wanted to share the project, and you might have noticed we didn't ask for any support of funding. Well, we're following up after this. We feel that we have really have legs in the project now. We have some real tools. As we've started going out into the community with it, I think there's use in a very transformative kind of program like this. I think it's also going to add a great value as we think about principal leadership throughout the region. To be able to take one of the monographs on a particular topic like deeper learning or resilience and be able to have professional development and coursework around that. So we have multiple funding strategies for this fundraising campaign. We have talked to people who are interested in funding deeper learning and networks of schools through the national foundations. We'll be pursuing that. As we talk and bring new schools on, we'll also look for people who are really interested in making this sort of long-term commitment and to this difficult work. We've learned a lot about what our expectations are and what we're really asking people to do. So we also have funding from the school districts, and then as we think about how do we continue this work in St. Louis, we'll need additional funders for this work. So I appreciate so much your coming today and hearing about the project. And if you're interested in learning more, we'd love to hear from you. We're going to turn it over and just let you ask some questions and kind of learn more about it. I would say we have about 10 minutes for Q&A if you have that many. If not, maybe 5. Questions you have? you can ask any of our panelists or any of us. Yes.
Yeah, I had a question. It's very interesting and creative, a lot of new thinking, and who knows what thinking may hit next week or whatever, given what you're going through. What I'm wondering is there any plan in place or any thinking about how do we ultimately measure the effectiveness of what we're doing and be able to say, yeah, this is really working as it relates to the kids and their ability to grow into more fully capable adults?
It's one of our biggest challenges, and we actually are next year really putting quite a bit of funding toward evaluation of the project. As of so far, we've been doing surveys because we're really thinking about how do you look at cultural change at every level, and what does that look like, at a district level, at a school level, when teachers and in classrooms. We also have people doing interviews to look at those, what we would think of as near-term changes. We also this year will be looking at, beginning to look at trends in attendance, trends in discipline, and in academic achievement of students, because we think the deep learning work really will make a difference. And as we go further into the project, I think, again, it will be looking at those trends over a few years, because this work does take that kind of time to really see the significant difference. Can I have anybody else jump in and help me? Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to ask, I've heard a couple of key phrases, leadership, relationship, and is there a percentage of time that you're working with the teachers regarding that relationship building with the parents? The parents have to play a big part in the development of their kids along with the teacher. Is there a track that's the teacher is being trained to have that relationship with the parents?
At this point, it's in our future plans, but it's not in our present action. So the work that we did at MRH with home visits was transformative in the way parents began to feel a part of the district, and we think that's a really natural part of this project because it is about the community. So it's definitely there, but it hasn't begun yet here in, I think, you're doing some home visits. So in some places, but it hasn't been part of the overall project.
Linda, would you talk a minute about the outcomes, the things that you saw in student outcomes at MRH after years of this work? Because I think that speaks more to the...
So MRH is sort of a case study of this kind of work because we developed this model at MRH over the 12 years that we worked there. I would tell you that I had tied my salary to student achievement, which was not a good idea. So the first 2 to 3 years we improved about a point. Each time, and I thought, man, we're working really hard, but we're only getting a point of growth. The truth is, everybody was learning new ways of doing and being, and it was silly to think that was going to show up in standardized outcomes. What we did notice fairly quickly was by the 3rd year, our discipline problems had dropped by 75%. Our attendance had risen by almost 20%. And we had parents for the first time who actually started being interested in coming to the school. Now, that all changed over the course of 12 years. We were, the first year, one of the bottom 25 schools in Missouri. And they invited those 25 of us to a prison facility for our first meeting about being bad. This year, MRH was listed by Niche as one of the 13th best school in Missouri. So, MRH has come a long way, baby. But it did it not by adopting a bunch of programs and trying to do it, but by steadily saying, where are we now? What do we want to create? What should come next? And making sure that students, teachers, and parents had a strong voice in that. So I know this isn't a quick and dirty fix, but I know it is a solid fix and it's sustainable.
So we will, as we really, the testing this year will happen this spring, and you guys have done twins map testing
Now.
Yeah. So we do in August, we'll have additional outcome data for this year, and I think in terms of really looking at baseline data, we have done a deeper learning survey so that as we're really looking at the next year and thinking about continuous improvement, are we seeing everything move in the right direction? Yes.
So Linda, you were at Maplewood Richmond Heights for 12 years,
Yes.
13 years. So the average, particularly as you work in high poverty districts, the average leader or principal is there for 2-3 years. How are you thinking about this culture work, codifying this somehow in the actual functioning of the system? So despite what would be inevitable turnover in many districts, there can be continued progress.
Well, that's part of what the monographs are designed to do, to go deeply into it, to talk about stories of how it has been able to sustain. I think too often with school reforms, as soon as the leader who has implemented it leaves, things fall apart. At MRH, in truth, they didn't miss a beat when I left. And that, I think, is attributable to the principals and the teacher leaders that had been developed there. So their work continued right on and has continued to grow and
You have
blossom.
12 years, but
If you only have 3 years, I say you start and you go as far as you can. But you have to create the vision. It's really not whether you come or go. It's the time that you are there. You have to create a sustaining vision, and you have to begin to line up the systems and the ways of doing the work to get people headed in the right direction. So they're just, also I want people to stop leaving after 3 years. You can't do this work in 3 years. It's naive. And sometimes I work in charter schools and they say, yeah, we only plan on our teachers being here for 5 years. That's the average life expectancy. And I said, you have to change that. Your job is to create an environment where people say, I'm building my career here. I can grow and be a wonderful teacher here and be a leader and do interesting things. That's what needs to happen. We need to stop that silly churning, particularly in urban areas where it gets down to, I think it's like 18 months now for superintendents. So it's insane.
I'm in month 20.
I do think too, that's one of the roles of the Institute of School Partnership, that we have, if I worked really closely this year with Rebecca at Jackson Park. If Rebecca left, I have the institutional memory that I can work also with her team to keep saying, let's really help indoctrinate this new principal, right? I think, as we think about a university and our role in the project, part of it honestly is that institutional kind of memory, the institutional work, and continuing to try to keep projects active and to show that we value them so that they don't disappear. Should we adjourn and let you have some time to talk individually and get some more reception, some more food at the reception?
Lots of food.
Lots of food.
thank you.
Thank you.